the beauty about sports is that it forces you to deal with so many life experiences, whether you like it or not, right? So I think for parents, at some point, there's certain stuff that kids just have to deal with, and it's going to help them be better people later on.
Welcome to Hockey Culture. This is the place where we try to change the culture of hockey, one interview at a time. And today's guest we have joining us, Florida Panthers Assistant General Manager, Brett Peterson. Brett, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, this is a very special day for Hockey Culture because you're the first Black Assistant General Manager in the National Hockey League. But I want to take it back to your upbringing first, because I'm always curious when I have guests on the show, especially guests of color, what was the thing about hockey that got you interested in playing? Because it wasn't because you saw a ton of Black players playing out there on the ice, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, for me, I think I was kind of thrust into it at a young age, just by accident, really, and I just took a liking to being, I think, a little bit different than most of the. Well, first of all, I was so young. My parents just put me out there. You know, when you're that young, you just show up and you do what you're told, right? So, but as I grew up, I think I took a liking to being different than most of the people that were my family playing the, historical sports. And it kind of provided me an avenue to just make my own thing. So that's with the team atmosphere, and then obviously ice and all that stuff. So that's how I stuck with it.
I mean, growing up in Boston, the Massachusetts area, it's a hockey town, just like Toronto, original sixth market. I had to battle my parents. They're from the Caribbean, originally Barbados, to get me on the ice. You said your parents threw you out there? I mean,
yeah.
Were they hockey fans before you yourself fell in love with the game?
No. That would be a negative. So, no, that my background, they had, my mother was helping out at the time when I started playing. We were living in Albany, New York, and she was helping out a hockey program there, college, and the coach, part of the I guess the agreement with her getting paid to do that was, take my crazy kid who has way too much energy and do something with him for 45 minutes. So they just put me on the ice, and I pushed crates around in between drills of the college team, and that's how I got started.
Did you encounter any sort of racism as a minor hockey player growing up at all?
Oh yeah, for sure. Various different levels, and there's always, I guess when we were growing up at that age, there certainly wasn't as much representation as there is now. So even when you didn't encounter it, in your mind, you're always waiting for it to hit, right? So, but I did, and I was lucky enough to have a lot of good people around me all the time. So I think that, when things did come up, they were dealt with in, a proper manner, and we moved on.
What advice would you give parents or other kids coming up playing the game to help them if they encounter these situations? What advice would you pass along that allowed you to get to that next level? Because you played college hockey, you played pro level, so you're able to push through all that negativity.
Well, I think first thing is to don't quit, just keep moving forward and use your situation to make, this situation that you just dealt with better for somebody else. Take a hit and keep moving forward. So, and then for parents, I think that the beauty about sports is that it forces you to deal with so many life experiences, whether you like it or not, right? So, I think for parents, at some point, there's certain stuff that kids just have to deal with, and it's going to help them be better people later on.
Now, take a hit and keep it moving. That's great advice. I always say you develop that muscle of falling down and getting back up again. Talking about life experience you gather from playing sports, are you able to have that experience, but then take your game to the next level competing at Boston College? Now, there's BU versus BC, and I played for the Boston Bruins. I know how crazy it is in that city when it comes to college hockey. Why did you choose Boston College?
Well, Greersy already had BU, right? He was so I figured let's sprinkle it over to BC. No, it's the biggest thing was when I was going through the process. I went to various different, the recruitment process. You're visiting different schools, and something about Boston College is just such a beautiful place. It's nestled right in the city, and it was basically like a dream come true. And I was a big college football fan, so we had really good college football teams. And then, of course, there's Jerry York, who is Jerry York. So it was pretty much. I remember when I went on my visit and coming back, my parents were telling me like, so you can think through this, and I was like, what are we thinking about? What this is the place, you know what I mean? So it was kind of love at first sight.
It's funny you mentioned Greersy. I played with the Greersy, we call him Rosie too, in Edmonton. But when I was playing college hockey at Michigan State, everyone kept talking about the other black player playing out east at BU. I tried to pit myself against him. And, I did a special with him, actually, with John Saunders. And it was unbelievable, called Black Ice. And I learned a lot about Mike Greer. And people try to pit us against each other. I was like, he's not doing what I'm doing. Like, we're each doing our own thing. So there's no competition here. There could be more than one black hockey player in the National Hockey League. But what was your experience like as a student athlete there at BC?
Oh, it was tremendous. I mean, it's a place where, because of the institution, you're forced to, really be a student and an athlete. And, it helped me for myself into a better professional, just with management in terms of staying on task and setting tasks and getting things done in a timely manner. And then, competing at a high level, because when we were there, the expectation was always very similar to you when you were at Michigan State, was a national championship. And anything short of that just wasn't acceptable. So that was our mindset every day. And that also, the beauty about being a student athlete is you can't have one without the other. So, that was, kind of instilled in me right away. I thought I was going to be able to slide by there, but, they did a great job with academic support and giving us so many resources to help ourselves. But you had to be a student too, which was something that I'm forever grateful for.
Was your experience different than you think, being a black player playing college hockey? And the reason why I ask you this is the first time I became aware that I was a black hockey player was when I was asked by a reporter during my college years, how does it feel being a black hockey player? I looked at him like he had three heads. I was like, well, how does it feel being a white reporter? He looked back at me and he's like, okay, I see exactly what you mean. And then there's another example when I first went to the cafeteria, I was there with my teammates and I walked in the cafeteria after getting my food. I looked around and I saw all the black students sitting in one area and all the white students sitting everywhere else. So I grabbed my plate of food with my teammates. I sat down, and one of my good college friends, his name is Brad Fields. He ran track at State. He's like, hey, bro, like, what are you doing? Why are you sitting over there for? Because I was getting dessert, of course. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Said, well, I'm with my friends. I'm like, well, why don't you come sit over here with us? But I didn't know anybody on campus. I just knew my freshman class, and that was it. And you know what, Brett? By the end of my freshman year, we had white athletes sitting with black athletes sitting with white athletes. It didn't really matter, but I was very aware when I first walked in that first day that things were a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. People ask, they're very similar, kind of along those lines. Like, do you ever feel the way? And I've always just tried to, circulate to really good people. So I just saw people. Now I'd be lying to you if I didn't know that I was different in terms of kind of representation, but I guess I just held everyone to a higher standard, that they were going to accept me as, a good person and a pretty good hockey player. Boston College was great because there is a fair amount of diversity. We've got a lot of different sports. So there was a lot of people that actually looked like me. They just didn't play hockey. So it was easier, I guess the hardest thing there for me was trying to get the students of color to understand why I played hockey.
Yeah.
That was the hardest thing because they just never seen that. So, and then once we got past that, it was great.
Yeah, I had those same conversations too. The president of the Black Student Caucus Association, his dorm was right across from mine. And he was like, hockey? He's like, brothers play hockey? I was like, man, you should come to a game, you should see. And then he was sold after coming to a couple of games that it didn't really matter what color you were, as long as you're willing to battle and compete. That's all that mattered. I mean, I'm looking at your resume as a player when you played, and I'm jealous. I mean, not only are you an assistant general manager, which is, I'm very proud of you, but you won a national championship. That's the one thing that I always wanted when I went to school. We never had the goaltending. We had good teams. The goaltending always fell a little bit short, but you won a national championship at Boston College. What was that experience like?
Oh, I mean, it was amazing. Prior to me getting to Boston College, BC had gone to 3 Frozen Fours and fallen short. The year that we had won it, we had just great leadership, and Brian Jonta, Scotty Clementson, Brooks Orpik, a bunch of guys. It was one of the most amazing teams I've been a part of, because you would get to the rink every day and you worked hard, you played hard, but at the same time, we never thought that we would lose a game or be out of it, ever. It was amazing. I remember we lost one game that year to Yale, and it was like, usually, when you lose a game, it's, everyone's moping around, salty. But it was such a fluke that it was like the radio was right back on, and let's shake this thing out and we'll be back tomorrow. It was amazing. So it was a great group of guys led by a lot of great older leadership, and then obviously coaching staff with Yorkie he's just a calming figure. So you have that much talent in one room, and it was going to work out. So
what kind of influence did Coach York have on your career? While you at BC and even post BC? He recruited me when he was at Bowling Green, and we still stay in touch when I'm in my involvement due to college hockey. But he's one of the most solid people that I know, the most influential people that I know, not only putting a lot of pros in the National Hockey League, but developing a lot of solid young men. The list goes on and on. The men that he's impacted over the course of his time as a coach at college hockey. Talk about your relationship with Yorkie and what he's meant for you in your career.
Well, I mean, he's a living legend, right? So whenever you can get 2 cents from the guy, it's probably invaluable information for you, or whoever he's talking to. So I think that's the biggest thing that impressed upon me about Boston College is you went in there as, an 18-year-old kid thinking that you were a superstar, and then you came out of there a 20-something-year-old young man. And they gave you the tools, especially Jerry gave you the tools to be that person, and know that you stand for certain things, and have a very good involvement in your faith, and then be a teammate and also be a good professional. So that was the biggest thing for me about the college experience is it formed me into a young man. And
as a college hockey player, you want to play either in the Great Lakes Invitational, if you're like a Michigan Big Ten type player, or if you're out east, you want to play in the Beanpot. And there's several times I sat in the stands watching Beanpot games. What was that experience like, having the arena full with all your Boston area college teams going to battle trying to win that trophy?
Well, I mean, once you got rid of the jitters, then it was a blast. But there was nothing better than the 2 first Mondays in February playing against. And in Boston, most of these kids at that time at the colleges, they were all guys that you played with growing up from different high schools, and there was no love lost at all across the street. And you lost friendships where, certain guys you played high school with, and they went to BU and you went to BC, and you're like, all right, well, I'll get you after the 4 years, So that's what it was. And it was a battle. The building would vibrate when you'd come to that championship game. And, there was just such a source of pride, because, Boston's such a town that is, what neighborhood are you from? Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What high school did you go to? So, you took that right into that locker room and you battled. So it was a blast.
Yeah, I could speak for that. I know friends at Medford and Dorchester. I know exactly what you're talking about. So now you leave BC, you turn pro, you played in the minors for a little bit, you decided to become an agent. What led to that decision? You end up working with Bill Zito as an agent, with eventually led to your current position with the Florida Panthers.
Well, I think maybe the Boston College thing hit. I started to do the math of where I was at the time, Grand Rapids, and I was like, these numbers don't look good for me. So we got a long ways to go here. So it had an amazing opportunity to, something that I knew that I was going to get involved in the sports agency business when I was in school, and the opportunity came up, and I just had to jump on it, because I thought it was the best time for me to kind of segue with my playing background into the business side, and to work with a guy like Billy, that those opportunities don't come up often. So, you know, it was kind of bittersweet because I had concluded my career, but at the same time, I looked at it as, you know, kind of a continuation of my career.
And people always ask and talk about, well, what's the NHL doing now? What's hockey doing now? And I always point to yourself and your hiring as assistant general manager of the Florida Panthers, because Vinny Viola is on the Executive Inclusion Council. And I don't know how hands-on he was with Bill Zito in terms of giving you the green light to be hired, but I know Vinny Viola signs those checks at the end of the day. And Bill Zito has to run those ideas and those suggestions up the flagpole. So we're already starting to see the impact of people being on the Executive Inclusion Council and what players are doing. My Players Inclusion Committee. Speak about where you see hockey today and where you see hockey in the next 10 or 15 years.
Well, I think, you know, so many fun things are happening. We're starting to really evolve the game that we've all loved, and I think we're trying to thrust it forward, I guess, into a little bit of you know, present day. Right. And, you know, hockey players are different now. Like it's a different hockey player that played than when I played. And I think there's, you know, with all that we've gone through thus far, the world is different. And COVID has been very bad, but it's also been very great because it's opened up some new conversations and some new opportunities and I guess some more forward thinking. And Mr. Viola is taking a huge step in that with bringing, you know, I guess, you know, his vision to the NHL. And quite frankly, that's what we need. We need people that are excited to, you know, kind of keep moving this world forward. And they have the platform and the position to do so. So, you know, I'm, you know, grateful for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to see what we can build on.
For any Black players that are out there, or players of color for that matter, that are interested in becoming an AGM, tell me what your day-to-day looks like and what your responsibilities are, just so someone out there is watching this thinking, I want to be an AGM one day, and this sounds kind of fascinating to me. Maybe there's something that might be of interest for me to pursue down the line.
Well, yeah, it's busy. It's busy, I'll tell you that. So, you know, I mean, a lot of my day-to-day is checking in on, you know, where our prospects are, what their current status is, you know, getting their metrics in terms of how they've progressed in practices that week and their games, as well as kind of heading up with our player development department, kind of the new players that we might be looking at, and then helping out with Billy and Paul Krapalka on the big club with any sort of moves or tweaks or all that stuff. So it's you know, kind of jumping around, which is different from the agent world, where you're kind of focused in on one player and that one player's problems and you know, triumphs. Now you've kind of got you've got a bunch of different baskets here at the NHL level, where you've got player development, you've got current players, you've got you know, another whole side where we're doing some foundation stuff in terms of in the Fort Lauderdale, Broward County area, and trying to really get more people on the ice and grow the game in that area. So there's a lot of kind of balls in the air at all times. And, you know, the AGM role, I think from what I can see is it's more about kind of first of all, having a great staff with you, but then, you know, being, you know, targeted and concise with regards to what you have to do day to day and what those tasks are, because as soon as you start doing one thing, you get torn in a different direction. So you got to make sure that you complete your task every day.
So how important was your college hockey background to becoming an AGM? You know, I always say that not everyone's fortunate enough to go pro, come to NHL when it comes to sports or hockey, but everyone has the opportunity to go pro when it comes to business. And now you've been able to dabble a little bit of both. So how important was the fact that you went to college and you went and played college hockey at Boston College with your success and what your plans to do with the future?
It was invaluable. I think that, you know, it taught you know how to stay on task and how to complete tasks, as well as you know, biggest thing in college is time management, especially the student athlete, right? It's time management is everything. So you've got to figure out how to not waste any minutes out of the day. And you know, the day starts for me around 5:36, and depending on what we're who's playing. It concludes around 11:30. So, it's sun up to sundown, and then you gotta do your job. You gotta do multiple jobs, and then you gotta make sure that you're spending enough time with the family too. So it's a full day.
Has it ever crossed your mind when you became the first Black assistant general manager? Like when we're playing, we just see ourselves as being players, right? But then you keep getting asked the question, people present this statement to you, like the first Black assistant general manager in the National Hockey League. Is this something that you thought of before someone like myself asked you about it?
No, I mean, I think, like you said, like you're playing to start, right? And you just, when I was growing up, the whole goal is to get to the National Hockey League. And then you start to kind of grow more, and you say, all right, well, there's a bunch of different things that you can do surrounding the National Hockey League and the sports in general. So I think, as I grew up and evolved, as a man, you started to think about, wow, well, maybe these are some opportunities that we should look at too. And you can still kind of, live a dream. So, I actually told somebody just recently, like, I feel lucky because to this point, I've never had to do anything that I didn't want to do. Right. So I don't feel like I've worked a day in my life.
That's my parents always tell me that, listen, Bajan people from Barbados always have these sayings. My parents always say, do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. And I haven't worked yet to this day. And I continue to hope that that's the case going forward. That's for sure.
Yes.
When you're an agent on the agent side of the business, did you ever have any instances where a player didn't want to be represented by a Black agent? And the reason why I'm asking you this, because I know that there's a Black hockey player that played the National Hockey League that didn't want to have Black representation, which is like so messed up and so backwards. It baffles me. But did you ever encounter or experience anything like that from any of the players you tried to recruit?
Oh, you know what? Like not directly, Anson. I think kind of goes back to what we talked about at the beginning. Like, that it exists, and that some people in some places, this is not going to be their cup of tea, and they're not going to see, the value for, the education, the experience, the brand, the company, none of that, right? They're just going to judge a book by its cover. So I always took the approach where, you always give people the benefit of the doubt, and I can't change anybody's mind of what they've made their mind up to. But I've always found that more often than not, if people got to meet me and sat down, they would have a completely different opinion of what actually this is.
We're definitely reading from the same book of life. That's for sure. I mean, listen, when I had locks, I had people that would cross the street when they see me coming, and then they get a little close. Oh, Anson, it's you. I didn't know it was you. I'm like, what do you mean you didn't know it was me? What are you talking about? So I know exactly what you're saying. I give people the benefit of the doubt, and then I treat people how I want to be treated. So I totally agree 100% with that philosophy. On that note, I want to thank you for joining us on Hockey Culture. I'm so pumped. I'm so proud. I texted you when I saw that you landed that job there in Florida as an AGM. And I'll be watching you intently, because one day, hopefully, you might be the first, or you will be the first Black general manager of the National Hockey League. So
thank you. Your text meant a lot to me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I was so pumped when Bill Douglas had told me. I was like, man, yeah, this is great stuff. We talk about representation. Well, that's important, because now there's people out there that think, hey, maybe I could achieve that one day. That glass ceiling doesn't exist anymore. And who knows? I could be a team general manager. I could be a team president. I could own a team. Like, who knows? But seeing you doing it the way you're doing it right now, very proud, because you've got that job based on merit. Nobody there in Florida is checking any boxes. When you look at what you're looking for as AGM, what you've done in your career on and off the ice, you check all those boxes. So good stuff, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Thank you.